Well guys, it's finally happening. We're finally doing it. Welcome to the Norwegian Civil Wars! This will be the first episode in a series where I will be exploring the entire Norwegian Civil War period. So come along! But first, a disclaimer. I'm not a historian, nor do I claim to be a historian. I'm just a person that's really interested in the field. Now, without further ado, come on! The Norwegian Civil Wars was a period between 1130 to around 1240 in Norwegian history that was plagued by fighting between the many factions of Norway. But how did this all start? It all began with the end of Sigurd Jorsalfare, the great crusader king of Norway. His death would mark the beginning of the Civil War period in Norway, as the people left in his wake would battle over the power over Norway. But how did we get here? Let's rewind. Back circa 10 years to around 1120. King Sigurd Jorsalfare was son of King Magnus Bareføtt, roughly translated to Magnus Bare Feet. And Sigurd had only one son, Magnus Sigurdsson, or later known as Magnus Blinde, or Magnus the Blind. So the throne would logically go to Magnus Sigurdsson after his father's death, right? Easy peasy, no problem. Ding dong! Oh! Who's this? Well, it's Harald Gille, of course! All the way from the islands of Scotland. He claims that he is the son of Magnus Bareføtt and then also King Sigurd Jorsalfare's brother. To prove that Harald Gille was actually Sigurd Jorsalfare's brother, Harald would have to do a jernbyrd, but only if he promised that he would not take claim to the throne as long as Sigurd or his son lived. Now, you might be asking, what is jernbyrd? Well, it has many different iterations throughout history, but the one Harald had to do was that he had to step on 9 different pieces of glowing hot iron. And if his feet wasn't burned at all after 3 days, God would have decided that Harald was actually the son of Magnus Bareføtt. Harald allegedly passed this test, and for the next 10 years he would keep his promise, working as a member of the king's court. Harald Gille would use his time in the king's court the best he could by being the nicest person to everyone around him, giving out gifts, being nice, and just gathering up all the goodwill possible in that 10-year time period. While on the other hand, the king's son, Magnus Sigurdsson, would not do this. He was described as being a not very pleasant guy to be around. When the king died in 1130, Magnus Sigurdsson was immediately anointed King of Norway. When Harald Gille heard of his nephew's coronation, he immediately went back on his promise to Sigurd and claimed that he also should be King of Norway. After the 10 years of being so nice to everyone around him, Harald was so supported by all of the people of Norway that Magnus had no other choice than to agree to share Norway with Harald Gille. The two kings split the nation and they ruled the country peacefully for around 3 years, until one fateful day in 1134. King Magnus Sigurdsson was tired of sharing the country with Harald Gille, and he amassed a giant army and attacked Harald Gille at Fyrileiv. Harald tried to fight back, but his army was too small compared to Magnus Sigurdsson's army, and he lost the Battle of Fyrileiv and had to flee to Denmark. In Denmark, Harald Gille spoke to King of Denmark, Erik Emune, and the king lent him an army of Danish soldiers. He then traveled back to Norway with this army. In Viken around Oslo, there was an army sent to stop Harald Gille. But as we all have learned, everybody loved Harald, so they instead joined him. And Harald then proceeded to overtake the whole of the Oslo area before traveling to Bergen. And it is here in Bergen, around New Year's 1134 to 1135, that Harald Gilles' forces met with Magnus Sigurdsson's forces, and Magnus was captured and tortured. His leg was chopped off, they poked his eyes out, and then they castrated him. And that's why Magnus got the name Magnus Blinde, or Magnus the Blind. This was done for a reason, albeit a bit brutally. Magnus was mutilated so he could not set claim to the throne again. He was then sent to a cloister in Munkholmen, and Harald Gille was the one true king of Norway. Ding dong! All the way from the Auric Islands, enter Sigurd Slembe. Sigurd also claims that he is the son of Magnus Blinde, and he demands that his legitimacy is tested. Harald Gille outright denies this. He has heard of the many murders Sigurd Slembe has committed on the Auric Isles and immediately calls for Sigurd Slembe to be killed. Sigurd Slembe escapes. And then he returns and assassinates Harald Gille. After the assassination of the King of Norway, Sigurd Slembe proudly exclaims that he is the one that did it and that he should be put as the new King of Norway. The people that loved Harald Gille obviously gets extremely mad at Sigurd Slembe for this and denies him the claim to the throne. The people in power, instead of accepting Sigurd Slembe as the king, anoints the two children of Harald Gille, Inge Krokrygg and Sigurd Munn, which were both 2 and 3 at the time, so I wouldn't actually count them as kings, but they are figureheads for the political parties that push their agenda. Sigurd Slembe realizes that he needs more affection from the people. And what he then does is that he takes Magnus Blinde out of the cloister, and they combine their forces to try to take back Norway from Inge and Sigurd Munn. This doesn't really work out for the two, and Sigurd Slembe has to escape to the islands of Scotland, and Magnus Sigurdsson, or Magnus the Blind, has to escape to Denmark. Magnus Blinde takes refuge with Erik Emune, and Erik gives Magnus Blinde a new Danish army. Magnus Blinde then travels up to Oslo and tries to take back his country, but he loses immediately, and he has to escape back to Denmark. Now Sigurd Slembe returns to Norway. He then proceeds to become somewhat of a terrorist along the Norwegian coastline. He travels with his forces and he raids and burns villages, and everywhere in his path he kills and murders. Sigurd Slembe eventually joins up with Magnus Blinde, who has spent his time in Denmark amassing a new Danish army, this time of swords for hire. With a Danish-Norwegian army of 30 ships, 18 of them Danish and 12 of them Norwegian, Sigurd Slembe and Magnus Blinde take their army to meet Inge and Sigurd Munn. And it was on the fateful day, 12th of November 1139, that Magnus Blinde and Sigurd Slembe's army met with Sigurd Munn and Inge's army at the Battle of Holmengrå. The battle seemed like it was going to be a slam dunk for Magnus Blinde and Sigurd Slembe's side. They had 30 ships compared to Inge and Sigurd Munn's 20. But as soon as battle commenced, the 18 ships of the Danish mercenary fleet turned tail and left. This battle would mean the end of Magnus Blinde, where he took a spear to the chest as one of his allies tried to carry him to safety. And he allegedly said that came 4 winters too late. Sigurd Slembe met the worst fate. He got betrayed by one of his allies and captured. Later, some of the people of Norway wanted him to have a quick death, but a lot of people wanted him to pay for the terror he did all along the Norwegian coast. Sigurd Slembe's fate was brutal. His arms and legs were crushed, the skin of his scalp was cut off, he was flayed on the back, then he was hanged and his head was cut off, and later he would be tossed on a lot of rocks. The opposing forces to King Inge and King Sigurd was now dealt with, and the two brothers ruled the country of Norway without any problems for the rest of their lives. And that ends part 1 of the series about the Norwegian Civil War. I hope you enjoyed, and I can't wait to tell you more about this 100-year warring period.
Smash that like button. Click that bell. Don't forget to click below and subscribe to SSS Studios. Da kan du putte det på hver video.